So I have been using my Futaba T10PX for 3 weeks now on my MR04 and my Reflex Racing cars. I have 3 RX28s and 2 MR04s. I came from Noble NB4, just a regular one, for a year and a half. And then I switched to Futaba T10PX. And I've been running my MR04 with the Futaba Evo 2 receiver. This car is so good. Steering and throttle is super linear. It's a perfect match. I like this radio with that car. With this radio and that car, the Evo receiver, it's also fast. They're doing the same lap times. It's just that it's not as smooth, especially the steering. The throttle, yeah, it's okay. They both kind of feel the same. The steering is not as clean. It feels on the track, okay? It feels like when I'm driving the car, it feels like with the Futaba and the MR04, it's doing this smoothly. With the NB4, it feels like it's doing this. That's only because I was driving them back to back, you know? Like I did 400 laps switching these two radios on that exact car, just changing the receiver. And yeah, right away you like this so much better than the Noble 4. However, the lap times are the same, okay? I think it was 758 and 759. It's identical. MR04 and these two radios. It's just the feel for me. Just this one is just more crisp, you know, especially the steering, and I like that. But you know, let's go ahead and talk about what I don't like. Why I end up moving back to Noble NB4 after using this for 3 weeks. First thing let's talk about is the what I don't like on the 10PX is the weight. It's very top heavy. This is top heavy, and I don't even have the drop down yet. With the drop down and you have it sitting upright, somebody bumps the table, this thing is gonna tip. When I had it with the drop down, I had to put something here like a 5-gram weight. I didn't use it for the weight. I use it for like a foot. So I put double-sided tape and I stuck it on here so that it doesn't tip. That's what I use the weight for, not this one, but something flat and small. And now I just added 5 grams of it, which is not a big deal. But the problem was it's always tippy. So if I have to lend this to my daughter to drive my car, she might just put it wherever and someone bumps the table. It can tip this way or tip the other way. It's very tippy. The top is heavy and the bottom is very light. And it's very bulky. I use a small hard case for my RC stuff, my Mini Z RC stuff. This, when I put it in the case, is taking up most of the room in that small case that I have. Second is the even if you put the drop down, the angle of the steering wheel is not as much as the Noble, so it's hurting my wrist. So I drive like this, and it's hard to drive it. Even with the angled steering, I want it more on this position. And this one can only go 10 degrees, I think, just a little bit. And it's not enough, so it's hurting my wrist after I do a lot of laps. I think I average 400 laps per visit, and yeah, it hurts my right wrist. Also, the touchscreen is not as sensitive as the Noble NB4. With this, I really have to push down on it, and I have the updated firmware. But you really, especially the plus minus button, you have to really like push down on it. I don't like that. And you actually, with this radio, because there's so much things you can do, adjustment you can do, settings you can do with this radio, you actually need to read the manual to set it up properly. And it's not something I had to do with the NB4. I didn't read the manual. Everything else here was pretty self-explanatory. This one, some, but not very many. And scrolling into the settings takes a while. This one is very straightforward. This one, there's like so many pages you have to go through just to adjust a curve or something like that. I turned off most of the buttons here because look, there's buttons everywhere. Every time I grab this radio, I'm careful because when it was new, I feel like I'm clicking on stuff that I shouldn't be clicking because there's a lot, and I'm sure there's some here too, here and here, or here, something like that. And I turned everything off so that when I click it, I know I'm not messing anything up. I turned them off, and then the LiPo battery on here, I bought it. When I bought this, it came with a LiPo battery, and it's nice because it's USB-C. You just charge it. The problem is it dies fast. One day I need to charge it while I'm at the track. This one, you don't ever have to do that. You just press the button and it's gonna charge itself. 2 days of no charging, so total 8 hours at the track, I'm okay with no charging the radio. This one, no, 4 hours I have to charge it. So then I had to upgrade, remove the LiPo and put a life battery. This one lasts forever. 1 week it's at 6.6 and it's still at 6.6 volts. So if you have this Futaba, you probably want to upgrade to this. Lasts forever. The problem though is that it's not very convenient. You have to remove the battery and charge it. It's not that hard. It's just that, you know, with this I can use this radio for 2 days or 8 hours, and I just put mini micro USB to charge it. So convenient, right? I don't need to remove the battery to charge it. Unlike this, I have to charge every day or while I'm at the track, or use this and don't charge it for a week and then remove the battery to charge it. It's not convenient. Now, let's talk about what I like about this radio. The tension on the throttle. You can add more resistance if you want to. And for me, it feels like I can adjust it to where it's really, really stiff that it hurts my finger. So I have to back off. With this one, you can't. Even you put it in the max tension, it's still too light. So I used to put a rubber band. Let me see if I can show it. I used to have a rubber band that goes from the trigger to that screw to add more tension. And then I twist the rubber band to add more tension. Okay? And that was good for me, that tension feel. But I didn't want to get used to that too much tension because I drive everyone's car locally, and I feel like I'm off with the throttle because their throttle is so light. So I want to go back and get used to the light throttle, and now I'm used to the light throttle again. But I'm saying this one, you can add more tension if you like that tension. This one has plenty of adjustment in the throttle tension, and I like that with this radio. And that's what I like about this radio. The steering on this, the tension is the same as my Noble, because the Noble spring I have on here is also Futaba, just like this. I replaced it last year because I used to use a Futaba 3PK radio for the longest time for Mini Z, and I used that Futaba 3PK spring and moved it over to my Noble NB4. So my Noble feels just like a Futaba steering wheel. The steering tension. What else do I like about this? I think really that's it. The throttle tension. What I like about this a lot. First, it's compact and it feels solid. This feels plastic, and I know it should feel more high-end, but really, if you forget about the brand and you just hold it and forget about the price and just hold it, this feels like aluminum. It feels solid. This one feels plastic. and the weight doesn't feel balanced. This one, the weight just feels so balanced, not tippy, just feels solid. I like the obviously the angle, the steering wheel, the battery. You can remove it for my 6-year-old to use this base, so my daughter can use it. It's lighter for her, and the reach is easy to adjust, and the trigger, you know, you can move this one. You have to loosen up the screw and force it out or force it in to move that reach on the trigger. This one is not like that. You just turn that and it's actually gonna move on its own. This one you have to move it. You can loosen up the screw, but you actually have to move it on your own. This one you don't move it. You just adjust something and it's gonna move on its own. And it's very user friendly, easy to use, and because it's indoor, I don't have any problems not seeing the screen, and it's compact, so it fits in my tool bag. Yeah, let's not even talk about the price. Okay, I didn't buy this at a brand new price. I bought it used. Okay, now let's talk about on the track. With the MR04, the radio is good, both of them. The throttle feels similar, except the steering. It's more refined driving the MR04 with this radio steering. The throttle kind of feels the same. Now for the reflex racing, I cannot drive it with this radio. Even if I lower down the response to mild, I can't do it. The steering is good. It feels just like this. However, the throttle is very jumpy. It feels like I have plus curve in the throttle. When I keep it in 20% and then I go a little bit more, the car feels like I blip it to full throttle, but I didn't. All I'm doing is 20% and then I'll add a little bit more and then let off. When that add a little bit more, the car just jumps. Meanwhile, the Noble NB4, you put 20%, it stays at 20%, and you add a little bit more, 30, 40%, it stays at 30, 40%. There's no jumping that's happening, okay? And I know this is something you can adjust in this radio settings, and I did. I tried it. I even messed around with the speed control. However, you can do it. However, with this radio, I didn't need to do any of that stuff. It's very straightforward. All I needed to do was to add negative throttle curve by -20. And the range is just smooth, linear all throughout. This one, there's just this range to where the car just jumps forward and then it goes back to normal. It doesn't jump, just keeps going forward. It just has that sudden surge, and then it goes back to the 30%, 20%, and then you add a little bit more, 25 to 30%, and the car just jumps and then goes back to 25, 30%. That's super annoying. But like I said, I know you can adjust that here. You can. I just don't want to spend that time because I always go back. Why do I need to do all that work when I didn't have to do that with this radio? And the lap times, the same. 7.5. With this car, I think I did 7. This is my 2500 reflex racing. The exact time I did with this radio is 7.58. With this one is 7.57, which is the same, okay? It's the same. However, the consistency is not the same. I'm more consistent with this because I can play around with the throttle range. This one, not so much. I'm almost always focusing on that 20%. And every time I hit that corner, I have to feather that throttle and leave it at 20%. Okay, I don't know if it's actually 20%, but it feels like 20%. So it feels like at 20% and I keep it at 20%, okay? This one, I can keep it at 20% and add more or even more. And the car will just stay and not jump out of the line. And with very minimal settings on the radio, which is basically negative throttle curve, what I did. This one, oh man, there's too many adjustments I had to do with this and the speed control, and still not getting it to where I want it. So that's what it feels like driving this car with with this radio and this radio. With this radio, I would choose this. I mean, with this car, MR04, I would choose this radio. The steering and the throttle feels linear. With this car, I would go with this, only because the throttle feels more linear than this. This has the jumpy feel. So even if someone help me out with the setup on this radio, I'm still not going to choose this because one, it hurts my wrist, and two, it's bulky. It's very bulky. So even if it drives the throttle identical as the Noble, I'm not going to choose this. So anyways, I thought I'd share that. The reason why I went back to Noble NB4, it's a good radio. You can spend time on it, which is something I don't want to do. But you can spend time tuning this radio to make that car work, or this car work the way you want it to work. But for me, I mainly just like to spend time driving. I don't want to spend time messing around with especially the electronics. I don't mind the mechanical setup, suspension setup. I don't mind that. But the electronic setup, the settings, yeah, I don't want to mess around with that. I like it default as much as possible. So yeah, and that's the reason why I want to, I'm going back to this radio. As a matter of fact, I'm getting another one for my daughter because I gave this to her. Now I'm taking it back. Anyway, I just wanted to share that with you guys. Okay, that's it. Thanks.